in the name of family law.
I'm here with Kent Wood, the owner and lead attorney at Wood & Associates in Lansing, Michigan, and today we're going to talk about the Revocation of Paternity Act. This is an act that was created in 2012, and it is so complicated. So Kent today is going to help us understand what the act is all about. Welcome, Kent.
Well, thank you. Yeah, the Revocation of Paternity Act, also, well, I guess in our circles it's called ROPA for short, is this idea that if there's a child born of a relationship and there's any dispute over who the actual father is, prior to 2012, that person was kind of stuck in terms of being able to claim their parental rights. But now, since 2012, they can do so as long as they do so prior to the child turning 3 years old.
So let's talk about the different types of fathers that the act identifies.
Right. So one of the types of fathers is the legal father, the presumed father. If a child is born during a marriage, it is presumed that the parents are the biological parents of that child.
The husband is the father of that child. The wife is obviously the mother, right?
Yes, and also if a legal father can be established if they're not married, but someone signs an affidavit of parentage. So they're presumed to be the father. And then there's also what I call the alleged father. That's the person who may actually be the biological father. They're not in the relationship. They're not on the affidavit of parentage.
They're not a legal parent, right, but they are actually the bio DNA of that father of that child.
Yes.
Right.
And so they each have different routes they can take. The mom can take a route. The legal father can take a route, and the alleged father all take different routes to challenge the paternity, and we establish, usually with the DNA evidence, who the biological parents actually are.
And a lot of times it's to revoke the parental rights of the husband, who is not the biological father, but is the legal father.
Right. The most common situation is usually there's parties that are married, but they've separated, but they haven't divorced, and one of them gets in a new relation. The wife gets in a new relationship, becomes pregnant. The law says that her husband, who she's married to, is the legal father.
Right, right. Well, let's talk about some of the cases you've worked on. So for one example you were mentioning to me earlier was in this exact context where the mother was trying to revoke her husband as the father in favor of who she thought was the alleged father, right?
Yes, we've done a few of these. So they were separated. She had started a new relationship, and she believed her new boyfriend was the father. And so she initiated and brought everybody into court, and they had to testify, and they all submitted to DNA testing. So her husband, the boyfriend, and the child all submitted to DNA testing. And it was determined that her husband was not the father. But unfortunately, it was also determined that her new boyfriend was not the father.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, I felt like I was in a Jerry Springer episode right there in the courtroom going, oh no, what can we do? Now, we knew before we went into the court, but we had to go address it.
And what happens in that case, is the judge going to have to deny the revocation unless she wants to make this other third person, maybe she even knows who he is at this point? I don't know.
Right. The judge, there needs to be a parent there for legal purpose and statutory purposes. So we actually finally found the actual father, and we established and completed the action about 8 months later.
So what I've seen a lot of, and I think you have too, is where they're the husband and wife, the husband's not the father, but somebody wants to revoke the husband, but what's the key for like the alleged father, the guy who probably is the DNA? Okay. What does he have to show the court in order to revoke the husband's paternity?
Interestingly enough, he has to obviously show that the child has to be under 3 years old. We've said that, but he also has to prove that he did not know that the woman was married at the time they engaged in the sexual act, at the time the child was conceived. If it can be proven that he knew, that is a barrier to him, or at least a defense barrier that the husband can say, hey, look, you knew he was married. And I've actually had this case where parties were unfaithful to each other and became pregnant, and the alleged father showed up and said, that's my father, but the husband had formed a bond with this 8-month-old child, and we were able to prove that the boyfriend or affair individual, the alleged father, knew mom was married at that time. So that stopped the judge. The judge just stopped it there and ordered everything to stay the same.
So, and I saw a case once where the alleged father knew that she was married, but then he was, I guess, under the impression that she did get divorced, and that was enough. But it was very fact intense.
Yes, that's exactly.
The other thing for alleged fathers is, in order to establish revoking the husband, is that the husband, the alleged father, and the mother all have to mutually and openly acknowledge that this other guy is actually the father.
Yes.
That's a tricky thing to prove as well.
That can be tricky.
Very tricky.
Yeah, we've used a lot of social media to help make that work.
Mm-hmm.
But there is another issue that's kind of come up, and a very unique issue in our office going on right now, so I can't get into too many details, but the Revocation of Paternity Act says paternity right in it, so it's designed about fathers. Mm-hmm. But we have a situation because of the change in law, same-sex marriage, 2 women married, they're going through a divorce. One became pregnant without the knowledge of the other. Mm-hmm. And now it's a question of how do we determine paternity? Mm-hmm. The law would say, and says, because it's supposed to be gender neutral, says that the other spouse, the non-pregnant spouse, right, the mom, is the presumed legal parent, the legal father, mm-hmm. because they were married at the time. Mm-hmm. But everybody would know genetically that's not possible.
Right.
So the question is, does the Revocation of Paternity Act, apply to this situation?
So even though the act says paternity, it says alleged father, presumed father, there's all these terms that refer to man. Can that be challenged in court? I think it could be. And for maybe a couple different reasons, because what if you had 2 men that were married to each other? Both of them would be fathers. So the same-sex marriage with 2 men would be able to use ROPA, but the same-sex marriage with women would not be able to use ROPA, which is I
guess it's not gender neutral, right?
Right.
It's a constitutional issue. Should women in a 2-woman marriage be able to use ROPA to assert parental rights or to withhold parental rights, in essence, if one of them wanted to do so?
Right. It'd be an equal protection challenge. Sorry, slipped my mind for a second.
Right. Yeah. No, it's a kind of a first impression. We've never had it. It was like, when we found out the facts and what was going on, we were like, holy moly.
But I think that point is well taken, because after the United States Supreme Court decided the Obergefell decision, which legalized basically same-sex marriage, all these states have statutes with language that's been around for a long time. And in this case, ROPA has only been around since 2012. But in any event, it was pre-Obergefell and the legalization of same-sex marriage. All those statutes, they haven't caught up with changing the language to be gender neutral.
No, they haven't. We're actually going to try to just plead with the court to allow us to kind of use ROPA as to push the issue and see if there's going to be any dispute on that matter.
So this is great, any other words of caution or wisdom that you can share with somebody who might be considering a ROPA action?
A ROPA challenge, the 3-year deadline is serious. We had a child situation where the child was 4, mm-hmm. and they denied the alleged father a chance to challenge it because of the age of the child. So do not wait.
Right. Well, thank you, Kent. We really appreciate it.
Right. Thank you.
In the Name of Family Law is brought to you by Wood & Associates, PLLC.